fight for prohibition was one of the many major mistakes made in American history. It caused one of the earliest divides in the 1900s in the US. This frontier all began in the early 19th century with people and organizations bringing up their ideas to push on banning alcohol around the country, which resulted in an immense transformation in the United States. Centuries before Prohibition was put in place, alcohol was beginning to become unacceptable due to the extreme abuse. In the 19th century, Americans drank 6 to 7 gallons of alcohol per year, which is more than 3 times the amount that people drink in modern day. This was normalized and ended up turning into a moral issue as people's drunkenness caused many issues in all aspects of their lives. Many men would become more violent and even beat their wives while they were drunk. They constantly would get into fights when they were intoxicated. Many accidents happened while people were heavily under the influence as they drank while they worked. Some people drank too much to the point that it was harmful for their health. So, for these reasons, many Americans thought that alcoholic beverages should be banned, but others thought otherwise. So finally, in the early 1900s, the 18th Amendment to the Constitution was passed, and it banned alcoholic beverages. However, it ended up doing the opposite of what a lot of Americans thought it would. It caused a skyrocket in illegal activities, and the government lost a lot of money. The want for banning alcohol increasingly began in the 1800s and was a religious movement at first. There were 2 main organizations pushing for it, who were the Women's Christian Temperance Union in Ohio, founded in 1874, which was made for social reform, promoting Christianity, temperance, and banning trade with alcohol and drugs. They specifically wanted to ban alcoholic beverages as they claimed they are what caused families and marriages to fall apart. And the Anti-Saloon League of America, which was formed shortly after the Women's Christian Temperance Union in 1893. It was formed to push for prohibition as they saw many people leave rural areas, and many Americans thought those people who moved were losing touch with God by consuming alcohol. They also majorly affected politics as the league went into the morals of drinking. The Ohio Anti-Saloon League thought if they banned bars, taverns, and saloons, alcohol consumption would decrease. They also used churches and many different political parties and organizations to join the league. For the first 15 years the Anti-Saloon League existed, it mainly focused on passing anti-alcohol laws, and soon after they began to push for national prohibition when they gained more supporters. In 1913, they planned a Washington, D.C. parade, which resulted in the superintendent of the organization, Purely Baker, to propose the 18th Amendment to Congress in the House of Representatives. They used many tactics to push for the amendment, as well as using anti-German sentiment due to the fact that World War I just ended and many brewers were German. The League eventually was able to get the 18th Amendment ratified and passed. Maine was the first state in America to pass prohibition in 1851, then Kansas, then North Dakota, and soon all the other states would have it. As the country was in a split, most traditionalists and progressive reformers supported prohibition, and they were known as Dries. They supported it because they thought it would decrease the number of crimes and violence. Dries also thought that banning alcohol would make a healthier, better, and happier society. They overall thought it was the root of many evils. Also, many owners of stores and companies wanted the ban as they thought it would help prevent work incidents and improve their employees' working skills. Well-known American evangelist Reverend Billy Sunday even thought that the reign of tears is over, the slums will soon be a memory. We will turn our prisons into factories and our jails into storehouses and corn cribs. Men will walk upright now, women will smile, and children will laugh. Hell will forever be for rent, which clearly didn't ever happen. On the other hand, many citizens who lived in immigrant communities in big cities and modernists opposed prohibition, and they were known as Wets. And they were in opposition because they thought it was the way of federal government trying to legislate morality. Finally, the 18th Amendment was passed in December 1917 by Congress and was ratified on January 16, 1919 by the states, which declares the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within the importation thereof or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territories subject to jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited, which basically is simplified to alcohol is prohibited except for consuming, producing, or possessing it for yourself. Congress later passed the Volstead Act in October 1919 to help enforce prohibition by the Bureau of Prohibition, which was extremely hard. When it was first put into place, consumption did decrease, but soon later it dramatically increased again. Also, in urban areas, people were against prohibition, so it was more difficult to enforce it there. The Volstead Act immediately caused a major impact on crimes. The number of crimes rose from 24% from 1920 to 1921. The act provided many officers to enforce the new amendment, but still didn't help, as there was a 41% increase in drunk and disorderly conduct and an 81% increase in drunk driving. As you already know, Prohibition caused the amount of illegal activities to increase, and more Americans started to break the law because many lost their legal jobs and prices were higher for alcohol. Many Americans started bootlegging, which is selling, producing, and transporting illegal alcohol. Alcohol consumption was actually decreasing from 1910 to 1921, with a per capita of about 1.61 gallons to 0.23 gallons, but began to increase by 1922 to 0.83 gallons. Even though there was a slight decrease in alcohol consumption, there were many negative social effects. Bootlegging increased gang and mafia activity and became a multi-billion-dollar business. Some Americans even started making their own alcohol or illegally imported alcohol from Canada. Thousands of pubs and bars closed so that they got replaced by speakeasies, which are bars that sold alcoholic beverages illegally. Drives wanted Americans to spend their money on things like dairy, education, savings, and so on instead of alcohol. This tremendously failed as people began purchasing more alcohol, and many became addicted to other substances such as marijuana, opium, cocaine, and many other drugs that wouldn't have ever happened if the ban was never put in place. Also, prescriptions of alcohol were legal, which allowed doctors to sell liquor, and it doubled the amount between 1923 and 1931. Many people were prescribed patent medicines, medicinal alcohol, which is 95% pure alcohol, and sacramental alcohol. There was even a 400% increase of medicinal alcohol sold. This clearly shows how Prohibition was able to be manipulated and ignored. Many people began to get killed or poisoned when they brewed their own illegal alcohol. It affected the economy tremendously, as many people lost their jobs when it was put in place, as well as major loss in tax revenue. Gang leaders, like Al Capone, also known as Scarface, thrived through this time as they were a part of the black market and were able to produce and sell illegal alcohol. Al Capone caused the majority of the crime in Chicago, which includes illegal drug trafficking, bribery, bootlegging, prostitution, gambling, homicides, racketeering, and robbery, which allowed him to become a multi-millionaire in his time. He eventually was sent to jail for only tax evasion and was severely mentally ill after his release. All of these illegal activities resulted in prisons to be full, which was not the intended result. In the first 2 years of Prohibition, 65,000 people were arrested as federal criminals. It was so bad that Sing Sing prison in New York had to transfer almost 100 prisoners to another prison due to overcrowding. Due to all these problems, it led to law enforcement agencies having to use sting operations by using things like wiretaps or placing an order at a speakeasy for alcoholic beverages to arrest bartenders. These tactics helped detectives arrest thousands and thousands of people. Overall, Prohibition was a complete and utter fail. Many people began to pressure the government to end it as they were sick of all the violence and chaos it caused. It was meant to stop corruption, but eventually became the main source of it, which is why the 21st Amendment was put in place in 1933. That states, the 18th article of the Amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed, which brought an end to the Prohibition era, and the frontier was finally crossed. This brought in so much more benefits as it helped the Great Depression a lot, which began near the end of Prohibition in 1929. It caused 1 out of every 5 workers to lose their jobs, and Prohibition didn't really matter to them anymore. Businesses that sold alcohol opened up, which created more jobs for people, which was much needed. Alcohol became taxed, which increases the amount of money the government gets from taxes, which is also greatly needed as they're going through the Depression. Violence, crime rates, and murder rates even decreased, as well as the black market began to lose much profit. Additionally, later in 1934, Alcoholics Anonymous was created to actually help alcoholics. The new amendment also allowed states to make their own laws and regulations on alcoholic beverages. Today, alcohol is still legal, but there are a few restrictions on it. Overall, this long and hard frontier has allowed Americans to change the country for the better and open up many people's eyes.